Good morning, everyone. A very warm welcome to all of you in our audience today. I'm looking forward to this session as much as you are. At present, we recommend that you turn off all your distractions to fully enjoy the session for which we are here, which is about discovering your sweet spot in life. Let me introduce our speaker today, Shripad Ranade. Shripad leverages his rich corporate experience across geographies, sectors, and levels, and his textured lived experience, and employs a challenging but empathetic coaching style. He coaches leaders towards being strategic, effective, inclusive, and successful while developing purpose and authenticity in their life. This highly engaging session with Shripad will not only underscore the need for great purpose in our life, but also elaborate on the inner journey of self-discovery that can help us create a more meaningful life. It will show you a pathway for personal transformation that has worked for so many in their journey towards discovering their sweet spot of success, deeper relations, greater happiness, balance, and fulfillment. Shripad, a very warm welcome and over to you.
Thank you so much, Kanika, for that very warm introduction. And good morning, everyone. I was wondering, coming in, what possibly one could do with about 50 minutes and how one could reach that sweet spot within that time. So obviously, I won't be able to do that with you, but what we are going to do together is to just look at some of the building blocks of how you can start thinking about what should be the sweet spot in your life. Is there something called a sweet spot, and what is it for you? Because if you know what it is, then you can do something about getting there. And so we are going to I have some slides, so I will just project them. Yeah. So what I'm going to do is take you quickly first through the idea that you need to have some amount of focus and some amount of choice that you make in what you're doing so that you can grow. And so I would invite you to put in the chat box how focused you intend to be right now. And more than putting it in the chat box, this is about your inner talk. What are you telling yourself? On a scale of 0 to 10, or if you're a Harry Potter fan like me, then on a scale of 0 to 9 and 3/4. How focused do you intend to be right now? If you're on Indian time, right up to 12:40 from now, are you choosing to be at 3? Are you choosing to be at 9? So let's start on that key. And as we say that, what emerges is, no, I have other things to do. So I'm too busy. And whenever I hear this, I'm too busy to think about the future. You know what I actually hear? What I hear is, I'll think of it when it becomes the present. So I'll always be catching up. I'll always be in the moment, but not a very positive in the moment. It's about not being able to be ahead of what is happening to you. And I call this a kind of an illness or a disease, and it's something I call busyness. And it's busyness with a Y. And this, like any other disease, has symptoms. And so if you find yourself, let alone speaking of a sweet spot, but just kind of managing to stay afloat, and I was doing this once upon a time, then you're overloading self, you're encouraging interruptions, you're responding quickly to every stimulus, you're seeking what is only tangible, you're making incremental decisions, and others will say you're acting abruptly. Now, why is it so difficult to stop doing this if it is so easy that it could be put on a slide by me? Clearly, there is something else happening here. What is happening is that we have our stories that we tell ourselves, and these are the stories. We never say we are doing this, right? We say we are consummate professionals. I'm not overleading self. I'm hardworking. I'm multitasking. I'm approachable. I stick to the facts. I'm careful. And I'm quick. I'm fast. So we tell ourselves these stories and we remain busy. And so what happens? We manage the present and we never build the future. And I speak from personal experience in my own journey as a coach, starting from my past, which was at that time my present, as a strategy professional. What was I doing? I was planning for the day, planning for the year, planning for my career. I would do what I had planned. I would check whether it was working, and I would act on it. And if some of you in the audience today are engineers, you might have heard of this. Engineers use this. They call it the PDCA cycle, right? It's for managing what can be fixed today. But there's another cycle which came to me as I was sitting one day and looking at this and saying, this doesn't seem to be about the future. And that is something where you start thinking about your future and you say, let me not plan, let me imagine. Let me ask myself open-ended questions. Then let me think what I can do about what I'm imagining and dreaming. Let me observe what's happening around me, and hence let me design my own future. Now, this is something which very few of us do. Many of us think we are doing, and few of us get it right. So it's worth talking about. The minute you say build your future, the problem is which future, right? So which of these targets are you going to shoot at? If you don't even know which target you're going to shoot at, it's very unlikely you will make it. Just stand there with a archery bow and arrow on this field and just shoot. What's the likelihood you will get it right? Very low. So this is a concept which is worth knowing. I know this looks quite complex, but what I'm saying is, if you on the left are at your current now, what's your potential over time as you move to the right? It's like an ice cream cone, right? Right in the middle is the projected future. At work, that's where the slides are made for, right? The slide has one projected default, extrapolated baseline, business as usual future. In personal life, if you're a young adult, it's the future where your parents say, oh, you can do anything as long as it's what we call a respectable and stable career, right? And then beyond that, you have that black, where you say, it's plausible, I could do it. It's more than projected, it's less than probable. Then you say, there's a larger set of possibilities for me. That's what is possible. And then you realize the direction in which you're going, which is a straight line from the left to right, or you think you're going there, is probably not what you want. What you want to happen, what should happen, is always off-center, which means it's not going to happen unless you actually do something about it. And of course, beyond that, in this ice cream cone, is the range of futures which is preposterous, impossible, won't ever happen. But it happened in March 2020. So I think we should stop saying that now, right? Okay, now that brings me to a children's book. And those of you who have read Alice and the Cheshire Cat, a particular passage which is within Alice in Wonderland, you would know what I'm talking about. Alice is a young girl in this book, and she goes down the forest path, and there's a crossroads she comes to. And because it's a children's book, there's a cat there, a Cheshire cat who can talk. And Alice says, cat, I don't know which way I should go. And the cat says, that depends a good deal on where you want to go, where you want to get to. And Alice says, I don't much care where. So the cat says, then it doesn't matter which way you go, take any path. There are flowers in every path, and there are stones too. But Alice says, so long as I get somewhere. And this is where it becomes more about our adult lives than about Alice in Wonderland. All of us say, oh, I don't subscribe to this notion that I need to have a sort of mission that I walk towards. These are overused words. Companies talk about mission and vision. I just want to get somewhere. It's a walk in the park. Let me enjoy it. Yes, but you want to get somewhere. And the cat says, oh, you're sure to do that if only you walk far enough. So you'll reach somewhere. Now, the added version of this is that when you as Alice reach there at 70 or 80 or 90, you may not like the journey that you went through. You may not like where you've gone. And that's a problem. So the better alternative is to actually look at whether you want to do something more deliberate with the rest of your life. And to do something deliberate, that is to walk in a certain direction, as the Cheshire Cat says, you need a destination. And whether it's a Cheshire Cat or it's Google Maps or GPS, you do need to give in a destination before you can get directions. So let's talk about destinations, and let's talk about it in two ways, right? So we said we'll speak about the sweet spot, and we are now slowly walking towards that, saying what's the sweet spot, what's the destination that you need to have. The first concept is a well-known concept, ikigai. It's a Japanese word which is actually a compound word. Is ikirukai. Those of you who know Japanese, pardon me for my horrible pronunciation. But essentially it says, what is it that will make your life worthwhile? What will give you longevity, health, happiness? And what they realized is that if you can never retire, but still never stress, then you got it made. But how does that translate? It sounds very esoteric, right? How does it translate to our daily lives? It translates in one of these two ways. You either walk the first sentence or the second. This is what I'm doing with my life. I love it personally and professionally. I'm good at it. But does the world need it? Will they pay for it? Or it's the other way around. The world needs something. They pay me for it. I'm doing it. But am I really good at it? Do I love it? These are questions all of us have, right? So somebody put it all together as a graphic. I must clarify that the graphic was made independently by somebody in Northern Europe, and then someone has just plonked the word Ikigai in. But now that it's there, serendipitously, we can use it. You look at these 4 circles. Some of you may have seen it already. The idea is that, particularly in your work life, but more generally in your life, there are essentially 4 areas that you need to get right. And if you see, these are circles which intersect, right? So if I'm a carpenter, the world needs carpenters. So I am in the pink. I can be paid for carpentry because the world needs it. Even if I'm quite a bad carpenter, I will get paid for it, and the world will need me. And I don't love carpentry, perhaps. Then it's just a vocation for me, right? So those 4 petals you see there: vocation, profession, passion, mission. Those are simple. You're just doing 2 out of the 4. But suppose you are a painter, right? Now, you are really good at painting. You love painting. You are paid for your painting, right? So, and then you realize that some cynic comes along and says, does the world really need painters? How are you going to do vikas for anyone, right? So somebody with that ideology comes and says that. So then you are in the petal on the left, right? Which has all the other 3 circles, but not the pink one. What's that saying? That's a sense of satisfaction, but a feeling of uselessness. So the awareness that each of us is on one or more of these smaller and larger petals is the first step to realizing that why the spot we are in is not feeling sweet. So like bees to nectar, if we can walk these petals and we can reach the center, then we have the sweet spot, and that is where we get the nectar. The other approach is, of course, the one which Stephen Covey popularized about 27 years ago, very famous book, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. He asked the question, begin with the end in mind. Is the ladder resting against the right wall? Are you climbing the ladder you want to climb? I did that, for example. I was a strategy consultant, and I said, I want to jump onto a different ladder, and I became a coach, right? And what becomes important here is what's important for you finally. What are your ends? Nobody says at the end of their life, and there's research around this. If you ask people who have a few weeks to live, nobody says, I wish I had spent more time in office, right? So this is a bunch of words which I have put together. This is the kind of things which people actually want to end with. Some want to end with challenge. Some want to end with success. Some want to end just with comfort. And some want to end with having a sense that they've fulfilled their duty. So I'm leaving these thoughts with you. What is the one which you want to end with? And as you think of this, you'll also realize that it takes you into making hard choices. Now, there's a gentleman here who is taking advice from his driver. Okay. Of course, he realizes the person is much more than a driver, but he is a driver in a sense. So those of you who are spiritually inclined, or those of you who take solace or draw your philosophy from this, just look at this. What he's saying is that, what is my dharma? So he's making very hard choices. He can't do everything. What's his sweet spot? And what the Lord tells him is that your sweet spot is you try to kill these other people who are your relatives, but you don't do it because you want to. You do it because it is your duty. So it's a very specific choice. It's based on an end in mind. And that's not something that just happened 3,000 or 5,000 years ago in India. It's something that's happening today in California. This is what Cook says. He says the reason Apple is a great company is that we say no to good ideas every day. And we can learn from this in our personal lives, saying no to good ideas every day so that we only work on the greatest ideas for our life. Which brings me to what Kanika said is the part where I want to share a little bit about what's the pathway. How do you do this? How do you actually arrive at this? The way we do this is to first ask ourselves what motivates us. We all have hygiene factors. For example, if I ask you, why do you go into office, right? So most of us would say, I go into office because I do great work. Some of us would say that, there's a cafeteria. Very, very few of us are likely to say that I'm doing it because we have a great washroom, right? So the better your washroom at work is, the less dissatisfaction you have with a bad washroom. It sounds reasonable to everyone that you need a good washroom to enjoy yourself at work. It's just for participating in work life. If there isn't a good washroom, particularly if you are a lady, there's a problem. It's just that it will make you stop hating your life and work if you have a good washroom and it's equivalent in your life. So it's about what you get, right? So in personal and professional life, there are these hygiene factors, and we sometimes get confused. We think that they should motivate us. They don't. They just reduce demotivation. And when you get this right, when you understand that you need both, and you start asking yourself questions with a coach or without a coach, what actually creates satisfaction? What differentiates your life? It doesn't need to make sense to others. You have something which only makes you love your life and work. And it is usually about what you can give, not about what you can get. So what are these typically? Typically on the left, hygiene factors you need to get right, but that's usually not the sweet spot. Nobody says, I have great job security, so I've reached a sweet spot. Right? It's likely on the right. What am I going to get to give? Challenging work, recognition, increased responsibility, personal growth, meaningful work, and growing together with your partner, with your friends, with your society, and at work with your colleagues. So once you get this right and ask yourself this question, what on the right is my core, not on the left? Then you can also ask yourself the other question. What is it that I stand up for? Values is very poorly understood, right? Many of us think values is actually just one set of values, which is about integrity, honesty, reliability, punctuality, whatever. It's about doing the right thing. Values is not just that. The way we are using the word values here is anything that you stand up for. For example, humor is a value for me. I stand up for the right to be funny. And those of you who know me know that. You could have a very serious meeting and I'll start going into my giggles and I'm going to crack jokes whether you like it or not. So I'm standing up for humor. So that's my invitation to you right now. Release judgment about what I said, center yourself, and think of your life. What have been the peak experiences of your life when someone or you honored a specific idea? That's your value. Somebody honored it. It was a peak experience for you. And when was it, pardon my language, that you felt like a lump of shit? Those were your trough experiences. Life is peak and trough. Someone or you did not honor a value. You're going down the street, you saw a 500 rupee note, you put it in your pocket because you were out of a job or you were really feeling bad and you needed the 500 rupees. But you really, really didn't forgive yourself for that. That's a trough experience. You violated your own value. Right. The other question, which can give you the same answer, is what nourishes you or what withers you. And so you come up with a set of values. And of course, some of them will be about your code of conduct, integrity, and so on. But there will be many others. For example, people have values, like I said, non-traditional values such as humor or about the right to offend, right? And there are more traditional ones such as integrity, such as professionalism, such as excellence, such as continuous improvement, learning, financial stability, being careful, right? So start thinking about that. And as you think about all of this, my invitation to you is, what did we just speak about the last 10 minutes? We spoke about identifying your motivators. What is it that you can give which motivates you? What are the ends that you have? There's that list next to the ladder. Where do you want to end? And what are the values that are playing with you? So weave those values, motivators, and purpose together. And what you're writing is actually that big word, that big term, a personal mission statement. Look at it, define it after a day. I didn't call it a personal mission because if I say personal mission, those of us who work for a company say, oh, mission and vision are dirty words. I don't take it seriously, right? So therefore, it's best to operate and best to approach it this way, where you get it done and then you call it something. Here's an example of a mission. And you'll notice that it has motivators. It's about what this person can give to others. It's not about what the person gets only. It has something about what the person will stand up for and what's important to that person. It's also about how the person wants to end, how they want to be seen. And by the way, this is my own personal mission. And it changes. To the question sometimes that is asked, will it change? Yes, it changes a little bit. There is some WIP you see there, right? First I said, I want to catalyze a positive difference in other people's life. And then I said, no, not life, only their mental life. As a coach and through whatever else I do, and their future life. I don't want to work on something that is immediate, right? But I'm also saying I want to derive joy. So I'm saying I'm not Mother Teresa in the sense of being completely altruist. I do want to get something out of it. But what do I want to get is something it could be money, but I'm deriving joy back through that money. So it's general enough and specific enough that it's for me, but it's about the whole of me. So that's what we in general call personal mission. As you do that, we move on to the core, that is vision. And those of you who play with these words at office know this. Mission is about really saying which direction you want to go to. We spoke about that, right? What the direction should be. Vision is actually saying at a particular point in the future, I want to put a stake in the ground. And that's the sweet spot. That is where I want to reach, right? You need to look at it through this monocolor or whatever you call it and decide where you want to put a stake in the ground. As you do that, most people, first question they say, but my life is so complex. How can I decide in which area of life I want to really achieve something? This is a very useful tool. There is another session within our conclave here, I noticed, where this is going to be spoken about, I think. But just to give you the overview, just look at this. Have this wheel in front of you. 0 is under center. Mark 10 if it's right. So for friends and family, if you're really happy with what's happening in your life on friends and family, you mark yourself with a pencil towards the edge of the pizza slice or halfway through. Or if you think that your health is really bad, it's 3 out of 10, then you mark it at 3, very close to the center. So you start marking this. And you see what's happening here? They're all adjacent to each other. Your personal growth is really dependent on how your significant other relationships are. And you can do your personal growth through fun and leisure. Your career is important, but your career is also related to how much money you want to make out of it. And today, more than ever, it is about your home environment. So these are all related. You will have to look at all of them. Those will give you the ideas about where you want to reach. Like I'm on a 3, I want to reach a 10. Or I'm on a 5 in my personal significant other relationship. I just want to stay at 5. I don't want it to be 6. Your choice. And then you also combine that saying, but can I get there? For example, if you say, this is my career objective, I want to be CEO in 5 years. Can you really get there? Or if you say, I want to be a spiritual guru in 3 years, can you really get there? So you use multiple sources. What are your strengths and skills? You could do psychometric tests. At work, you have performance feedback. And then people are always telling you what they think about you. And then it says something you notice about yourself. You take all of this into a conversation with a coach, if necessary. And so then you are doing the next thing, which is drafting not just a mission, which is about how you want to lead your life, but a vision, a mental picture of your life 5 to 20 years from now. 5 to 20, mind you, because it's really about how much you can think or imagine into the future. Put it all together, write it in the present tense, sleep over it, write it again. At some point, you'll realize that just the process of writing it is giving you a lot of ideas about what you should and shouldn't do about your personal life. And once you get clarity there, you will get more and more clarity about what should happen to you as a professional in your professional life. Start with the personal. That is what I would recommend. Now, as I say this, some of us will say, or if we are honest, most of us will say that I have discomfort in writing my own future. And why is that? When I suddenly ask you to write about what you are going to be 20 years from now, if I say it is now the year 2042, I am a 60-year-old person, and I am going to, and I am doing this with my life. We are uncomfortable writing that. Why? Because you have to visualize, and visualization is a muscle. We haven't used that muscle. We have been told to just be on autopilot, right? And this is conditioning since childhood. Who are you to write your own future? Your parents will, your teachers will, your wife or husband or partner will, and your boss will tell you what your future is. The other thing is that when you start writing your future, you have a pursuit of perfection. So you just can't put anything on paper. No, it's just not right. I can't put it there. And people really struggle. So write anything. It's your pen, your paper, your eyes, your mind. It doesn't have to be perfect. And then there are these, musketeers, which is really a fear of failure. If I write it, then I'll fail against it. So better not write anything. And what if I write it and I succeed against it? And I see this in coaching all the time. The fear of success masquerading as the fear of failure. If I succeed in my personal and professional life, it will mean that I have made certain choices. For example, I attend less parties. I attend less to certain relatives. And how will I look? I'm fearful of what I shall become if I'm successful. Maybe I think that all successful people are bad. They have made horrible choices. And I don't want to be one of them. And last but not the least, conflicting priorities. We already spoke about that. There are so many 7 or 8 things that are happening in life. So it does become necessary to choose which one you want to. That brings me to the topic of how you will reach there. And I'm mindful of time. We have spent quite a lot of time on understanding the entire idea of how you should have some sort of clarity on mission, some sort of clarity on vision. I want to leave plenty of time for Q&A. Let's look at how you will reach there. The only resource you truly own as a person, and we are not speaking about you as a professional, we are not speaking about you in any of your roles, you as a person, just look at yourself. The only resource you really truly own, a finite resource, which no one else has. They have their own, but they don't have yours. That's your time. So you write a mission, you write a vision, and then you go and do what you were doing yesterday and the day before. You don't change what you do. You don't change how you invest your time. Then it's not going to work. It's like companies which write mission and vision and strategy, and then they don't put their money where their mouth is, right? They don't invest in what needs to be put in, the people, the infrastructure, which will make their strategy succeed. Don't do that mistake. Invest your time in the service of your agenda. Some of us would know this visual. This is an experiment that was conducted repeatedly in the US over the last few decades. This is about, it's popularly called the marshmallow test. What it did was they got these cute little kids of between, say, 5 to 8 to sit in front of a bowl of marshmallows. Those of you who don't know, marshmallows are sickeningly sweet sweets. They are some of the few sweets in Western civilization which are as sweet as Indian sweets. Anyway, that's a different topic. But I had to have something sweet coming into a session which was about the sweet spot, right? See, this is how I insist on humor. Okay, so this child has the choice of either picking up one marshmallow and running away, or waiting there for an entire 15 minutes. And if it does that, then the child gets 2 marshmallows instead of 1. And they did a longitudinal study, and amazingly what they found out is that the same children who are willing to wait for the entire 15 minutes and hence get 2 marshmallows instead of 1 were the ones who showed tenacity and resilience later in life. And that then had a correlation to their success in their personal and professional worlds. So that brings us back to, are you doing that? Are you investing your time in the service of your agenda? And how do you do that? Obviously, you have a finite amount of time. So what you do will have to be clearly about not doing something so that you can do some things. So you have to choose your roles and battles. And the way to do it is first name all the roles you play. And some roles are obvious. For example, you could say, well, I'm a parent, I am also a daughter or son, I am a wife, husband or partner, I am an employee, I am a neighbor. But name some of the other roles that you also play, because you're spending time on those. For example, being a concerned citizen, being a reader of a newspaper, right? Being the consumer of online content. These are all roles. Choose which roles you want to excel in and which you want to fail at. The idea that you can do everything is the antithesis of reaching a particular sweet spot. You're trying to make everything sweet. It doesn't work. So what is it that you want to fail at? And when you start thinking about it that way, President Eisenhower, who was earlier General Eisenhower and won the Second World War, if I put it simplistically, he had this matrix, which was about aggressively reclaiming your time and focusing it on what you really want to do. And people use this matrix when they are, in corporate training programs, when they are teaching people how to do their work. But I'm using it in a different context. Have you really identified anything which you can eliminate? Do you have a do not do list? And that's the crux of it. If you want a sweet spot, you need to have a do not do list. If you don't have a do not do list, you're doing everything for everyone. And if you're doing everything for everyone, then you're probably left with no time to really do anything for yourselves. So do these things. Focus on what is really important and urgent for yourselves. I wasn't doing it and I do it now. So I can say from personal experience, it works. The other thing is also to carry your weather with you. Again, I'm borrowing from Stephen Covey of 27 years ago. Instead of the shoulds and the haves and I need tos and I can't, look at how you can reframe those sentences. I choose to, I prefer to, I want to. What's going to happen here? You're going to start making choices. I should be a good daughter to my mother and I should take care of her all the time, versus I choose to spend time with my parents. I choose to spend time, in my case, for example, my parents are 90 and 88. They are financially, physically, and mentally independent. God bless them. I visit them for 4 hours every Wednesday evening. I choose to. I don't do it because I must. I don't do it because I should, but because I choose to. Do I have to? I don't have to. I prefer to. Do I need to? I don't need to visit them, but I want to. And then if it's raining a lot, oh, I can't visit my parents. If only I could visit my parents. I said, let me see if I want to go through the rain. So carry your weather with you and get in charge of your emotions. And that's something, of course, easier said than done, but you can do it with a coach. As you say all this, and this is just really the back end or the business end, as we call it, of doing something like this, right? You can't do it alone. Ask for help from your network. And when we say ask for help from your network for you to reach your sweet spot, sometimes people will ask for only one out of these 3 types of help. So what I'm making visible to you is that there are 3 ways you can take help from your network. One is you simply ask for answers and directions. You simply say, where should I go and how should I reach there? The other is that they could, instead of giving you these answers, they could ask you questions. And that's where a coach or somebody who's acting like a coach comes in. They ask you questions. Where do you want to go? Why there? How will you know that you will be happy there? Why would that be your sweet spot? So questions are another way in which people can help you. And the third is that they can tip the field for you. They can actually help you along the way, get you a new job of the kind that you want, tell you where to get trained, give you some mentorship, maybe even give you an internship. So ask for help from your network. And the minute we say that, people say, oh, but I don't have a network. And so I used to be one of those people who said, I'm an introvert and I'm not a business card pusher and I don't like to, just connect with people and I'm not a matlabi sort of, person. But this is what I realized, that it takes a village to raise a child, as they say. It takes a network to raise a child to an adult, to a functioning adult. You need to have respectful, reciprocal, and trusting relationships. Some of them will not be respectful, you can let them go. Some of them will not feel reciprocal, you can let them go. Some of them will not be trusting, let them go. But there will be a few relationships that you have in your personal and professional life where you are doing collaboration which is meaningful, which is long-term, and you're investing time and effort. So I'm not talking about relationships which are manipulative. I'm not talking about those which I call BHBC. BHBC, what I mean by BHBC is blow hot, blow cold. So don't do that. I'm not advocating that you become a snake oil salesman, as they call it. What I'm advocating is that you become a good enough person to be friends with. And for that, you're doing collaboration which is meaningful and long-term. For example, on LinkedIn, when people send me a message on LinkedIn saying, I would like to connect, the first question I ask them is, how can we collaborate together? I don't say, what do you want from me? I don't say, what can I get from you? I say, how can we collaborate together? Most people don't know how to answer that question. But those who do, it becomes meaningful. In summary, you'll notice that we said that we'll speak about discovering a sweet spot in your life, but I really didn't actually define what a sweet spot is, right? So let's end that way. Let's look at what we mean by a sweet spot in life. And it depends on which philosophical tradition you want to follow. If you want to follow the tradition of Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle, then they have defined a sweet spot as a considered life. In fact, Socrates is supposed to have said that a life which is not a considered life is not worth living. And what he means by that is exactly the things we spoke about. Have you considered what makes you work, makes you tick? Have you considered what you're working towards? Do you know how it will make you happy? Do you know how it will make you any of those other things, 15 things that were listed there, everything from legacy to duty? Those are questions which Socrates asked. Or you could look at Indian philosophy. The ananda of sthairya, the serenity of sthairya or stillness. Look at yogic philosophy, in particular. Again, that is saying that your sweet spot in life is when you attain that stillness, that sthairya of first understanding that your time here may be limited as this body and this mind, but there is something beyond that. If you subscribe to that philosophy, there is something beyond that which you could call a self or a soul, which can be seen and be an observer. And the third, if you want Japanese philosophy, then never retire, never stress, and reach your ikigai. So all the major philosophical traditions, and of course, I'm not saying these are the three, all of them have been saying the same thing. Live a deliberate life, know where you're going, invest your time in reaching there, and then you'll have sweetness, not regrets. And let me end with a thought, and we'll open it for questions if any after that. I sometimes try to say that he's my favorite philosopher, but it is difficult because I can't pronounce his name. Friedrich Nietzsche, if I got it right. The individual has always had to struggle to keep from being overwhelmed by the tribe. If you try it, you will be lonely often, sometimes frightened, but no price is too high to pay for the privilege of owning yourselves. And when I sometimes speak about this, people say, Shripad, this is all getting very heavy. And so I always say, if you forget everything that you say today, that you heard today, just remember the Cheshire Cat. Remember the questions that the Cheshire Cat asked Alice, and it will all come back to you. So that is what I had to say. I'll stop here, and I'm open to questions. I'll give it back to Kanika. Let me know what we should do with the rest of our time.
Thank you so much, Shripad. This was really, really so relatable. I mean, I was getting goosebumps in so many places. It was really nice. And the comments have been just pouring in. There are questions, there are thoughts, and it's just amazing. Some of the things that you mentioned, it was just like coming out of my life as if. So I'll start with the questions. And the first question that comes from Abhijit is, which side do you think, on the slide where the hygiene factors and the motivating factors was, which side do you think money falls? And there are thoughts which have the chats been going on, but what is your perspective?
I think the general arc of thought or narrative that most people go through life with is that they have an understanding of how much money will give them basic comforts compared to where they started from. And people have reference points about how well-to-do their parents and parents and other relatives were, how well-to-do their classmates were. So we all have very specific reference points, and therefore it becomes quite relative of how much money is enough. And the research shows that once people think that they have enough money, additional money doesn't actually change your set point of happiness. You are at a set point of happiness. And there's also research which shows that with things like money, it takes about 1.5 years. Lottery winners, for example, if you poll them, they have an immediate surge of happiness after winning the lottery. It takes an approximate amount of 1.5 years for people to come back to their set point of happiness. So somebody who has lost a limb or somebody's got a lottery, they come back to what their happiness was before the traumatic or ebullient event in about 1.5 years on average. So the more general answer to the question is, it depends.
True. I think that was the exchange in the chat was as well, that, it depends as to how much you value. So totally. And Yeah,
So
very well
Kanika,
said.
there's a joke around
Yes.
this. There's a joke around
Yeah.
this. It's an American joke, and I personally think it's a slightly sexist joke, but I'll share it anyway in a spirit of humor. Uh, someone's once said that a rich man is someone who earns $100 more than his wife's brother. So, and I mean, we may or may not subscribe to the social dynamic that prefaces the joke, but it makes a very important point that it is relative. You are very rich in India if you have a net worth, for example, of 1 crore of 10 million rupees. You are a very rich person in India, but not so if you are in Scandinavia. So it really depends.
Right, right. And, sometimes I wonder that we look at the mission statements, and you rightly said, when we are in the corporate, the mission, vision are some things that we say, okay, we are not sure if we want to go there. Let's look at, and you focused on what your personal vision and mission is. So, when we look at how much, what vision do I have for myself with respect to money? I think it becomes very important. And somebody pointed out that when we are looking at instant gratification, uh, how might we cultivate some of these virtues that you've spoken about? How might we actually look at those areas of development, the motivators? How do we really do that?
Can you rephrase that question?
Yeah. So the instant gratification is something which is just like coming about, like people are all going for the instant stuff, right? So if we have to
Yeah.
cultivate something in our life, these virtues about, how to motivate ourselves, how to look at our vision. So how does one go on cultivating that over a period of time? So there's a question that I'm
So I think there's a lot of material which actually says that you will reach where you choose to reach. Essentially saying, can people who are on the call today take out 5 minutes of their time today, along with a piece of paper and a pen, to write down what their values are? If they can't, they're making a choice not to.
Yeah.
But if they make the choice, and then they make the choice tomorrow to take out another 5 minutes to write down what their strengths are, then they have done more progress now in today and tomorrow across 10 minutes than they may have done in the past few days, months, weeks, or years. So, I have the same screen addictions as everyone else, right? So it does. I'm not trying to pontificate. I'm not trying to claim at any point of time that I don't have a screen addiction or that I do not go for the immediate gratification that all of us are hooked onto. I'm doing that, but 5 minutes here and there is what will really help.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And something very interesting, it's, a question that comes to mind. You said that it's very important to have a do not do list. Yeah, it was very interesting. So, it's a question. Do you really maintain that kind of list for yourself to really keep yourself on the sweet spot?
So I started doing this operationally when I first learned it as the Eisenhower matrix. I did it operationally in the sense that I used to have a to-do list of about 40 things, right? Whenever I make a to-do list about once in a week or whatever, it comes to 40 or 50 things. Now, sometimes it's even more. Now, I know that I will only do 5 or 7 of them. So why keep all of them in my mind? Because they occupy mind space. So then I started eliminating some things. I said, if this is not urgent and if this is not important, why should it be there in the list and occupy my mind space? And then I started doing it about larger things in life. For example, I said, do I really need to watch TV? Everybody watches TV. I decided at some point of time, I will not watch TV. So for the last many years, I have watched, of course, I watched streaming such as Netflix or whatever, but I haven't watched a TV channel in many, many years. I just cut it out. I eliminated that from my life. I haven't watched it because it's those 6 talking heads all arguing with each other and lowering the general sense of civilization that we have about ourselves. Why do it? I don't do it.
Wow. Yeah, right. I think it just does make sense. So just that awareness about what you want to do and what you don't want to do is so crucial in keeping yourself on track. Great. So there are great comments. People are just comments are, you're going to love the comments and the thoughts that are coming in the chat box. They're like really amazing.
Kanika, if we want to leave about 5 minutes for you to make closing comments, perhaps any announcements that you want to make, then I am happy to answer some of the questions here. For example, I have Anuradha saying, what about the pure joy of the journey itself? Do we always need a destination to undertake a journey? And Anuradha, this is of course, this is a debate, but that is why those two perspectives, right? One is a perspective that if you can look at which petal you are on, and you don't want to be on that petal and you want to be in the center, then you do have a destination on the basis of which you'll undertake the journey. So if you just want to walk around the petals and you are happy doing that, that's fine. Then perhaps you're not on the petals, you are in the center. And then it's just about awareness. And the pure joy of the journey, yes, of course. I don't know how bees feel as they walk across petals and reach the center. Maybe it's enjoyable, I don't know. But the other perspective also about beginning with the end in mind, it's relevant to the idea that all the research that has been conducted on people who have terminal illnesses, there's been research which shows about what they think about and what regrets they have. And people do have regrets by the end of their life about how they could have done different things with the time they had on earth. And this is in the service of that yes, there is pure joy in the journey, but there can be regret at the end of joy. So if you are aware that there's going to be regret at the end of joy, then you could moderate your current joy and reduce your future regret. So that's one idea.
Okay. Thank you. So I see, yes, so there was a snag, and I see a question here from Tarun Kohli, and he asks, how to control stress instead of getting controlled by it?
So I would strongly recommend, highly recommend Robert Sapolsky. You just go to YouTube and watch his videos. He's a scientist. He works specifically in the area of endocrinology and specifically about how the stress response works. But just to summarize that here is the minute we say how to control stress instead of getting controlled by it, we need to understand what is stress. Stress is a response. What is happening in the environment is some sort of stimulus, right? For example, as Sapolsky says, you are a zebra and you are running, and there's a lion running behind you. The lion is the stimulus. The stress response in your body decides now is not the time to do digestion, not the time to do ovulation, not the time to do higher order thinking, not the time to look good. So all of those body functions shut down for the moment. All muscles, all blood, everything is focused on running away from the lion, right? That is called stress response. So what the question then becomes is how to control your stress response in a way in which it is adequate to the stimulus. For the last 3 million years, we were like zebras, lions were chasing us, and it made sense for us to get physically stressed so that we could have all the adrenaline and cortisol, which would allow us to run away or fight or flight response, as we call it. In the last 10 to 12,000 years, if you are walking down the street and if you see something long and cylindrical, it has become more and more likely that that's not a snake, but it's a rope. But our biological evolution hasn't been that fast, and we still have a moment where the part of the brain called the amygdala still thinks it's a rope, it still thinks it's a snake and asks the body to panic. Then the front of the brain catches up and says, hold on, we've seen this before, it's a rope, we are in a street, it's in the middle of a city, it's likely to be a rope, let's go and examine it. So I want to change the question, Tarun, from how to control stress instead of getting controlled by it to how to recognize that our physical stress response is outdated to the stimuli that we get in the last 10,000 years. And therefore, it is a profoundly artificial approach through mindfulness, meditation, and all that to realize that we are more often just inconvenienced by ropes and not in physical danger due to snakes and lions. Hope that helps.
Yeah, right. Okay, so we move on to the next question from Srini. If you don't mind, could you elaborate on the point you have mentioned about fear of failure versus fear of success?
So fear of failure, I think, is fairly well understood. What we mean by fear of failure is that if I don't try, I will never fail, essentially. So let me not try. Fear of success is more difficult to notice because it's usually less obvious. Typically, it takes the form of saying, if I try and if I succeed, then I can only succeed through compromises in other areas of my values and my life experience. For example, I can only be a CEO if I decide not to have work-life balance. So in 2017, I left the Tatas. I had a full-time job writing strategy, and essentially I was on my way to perhaps heading something within Tatas. And then I said I wanted to leave. And then my boss said, have you gone completely crazy? You're about to become CEO of a smaller company or a business head in a larger company within Tatas. Why would you do this to yourselves? Do coaches really make money? Right? So you're saying this. And I said, I fear the success of being a CEO because I know the compromise that will happen with it. Because I don't know any large business, corporate business CEOs who have great work-life balance. I really just don't know any. They may have some better or worse, but I don't know any who have the kind of balance where I only want to work about 20 hours a week. So I fear that success. That's the distinction.
Right. Interesting. I have a very interesting question from Indraneel here. How one can combat office politics if own vision for organization is marginalized in between?
Two different issues, right?
Yeah.
You have. If you have the influence to actually change the vision of your organization, then go ahead and talk about it. If you don't leave the organization, it really depends. I'm not an expert at office politics, but I can say this much, that whenever I or any other coach, in fact, whenever we do team and group coaching, what we notice often is that a lot of the misalignment on vision and on where the company, business, or team should go is actually benign. People are just not spoken with each other. Not all of it is malignant. Not all of it is about people trying to be nasty to other people. A lot of what is called office politics is actually about people just trying to do a good job and not letting others get in their way. There's a concept in philosophy called Hanlon's razor, which says that let's not assume malice for something that can be more easily explained by stupidity. Now, I'm not saying it's stupidity, but to paraphrase that, let's not assume that the other person is out to get you. Perhaps they're just looking out for themselves, and a conversation is what will help.
So true. That's absolutely. I mean, we see that all the time as coaches, right? So one last question from Mantha, which is, do we make hard choices or right choices? Shripad, what's your perspective?
I don't believe there are any right choices. Mantha is being mischievous. I don't think there are any right choices. There are better choices. Hindsight is 2020. What I meant by hard choices in 3 or 4 respects. One is, if you come from a background of strategy and business like I do, then it's important to understand that strategy is a hard choice, in the sense that companies say that we have made the right choice for our future. We have decided to be customer oriented. And that's nonsense. That's not a choice, because no one else, none of your competitors has made the choice to not be customer oriented. So who are you talking to? What are you saying? That's not a choice. That was an easy choice. You had a choice between disappointing customers and pleasing customers, and you chose to please them. That's not a hard choice. So the hard choices is where you have to decide to lose in battle versus kill your mama. That was Arjun's choice. That's a hard choice. Do I kill my mamaji? Do I kill my chachaji? Do I kill my cousins? Or do I withdraw from battle and lose battle? My entire life I trained to win this battle, and now I'm saying I can't do it. That is a hard choice. And I don't think anywhere in the Gita there is any implication that one of the 2 choices would be the right choice. He is told what would be the choice that would be his dharma. And there's a differentiation. Dharma is what you should be doing. The should there is about what is your role in this universe. It is not about whether it is right or wrong. The Gita, if I have to take that metaphor, doesn't really talk much about right or wrong. It really talks about what works. So that is what I would bring into the conversation when somebody says right choice or hard choice.
Hard choice, right. One very interesting, I think, let's make this one the last one by Gaurang, which says he's asking how to build reliance for your own mission if the journey backfires initially.
So you have to have humility, you have to have a plan B. And I didn't cover enough of that. We didn't have enough time for that because I wanted time for questions, which is that you need to work typically with a coach to build accountability. Meet your coach every week or every month or whatever it is. All of us, all human beings work better with having someone else to meet and being accountable to. One of the things that a coach does is be an accountability partner. So allow your coach to ask you about, so have you done any progress? What's coming in the way? What would you want to resolve? What choices did you make? For example, I was coaching someone once who wanted to lose weight. And she said, I follow the dietitian's advice every day till about 6 p.m. in the evening. But after that, I go out with my best friend, another girl. I go out with her and we have ice cream or we have faluda or something like that. And I said, so what's happening here? And through the coaching conversation, where she reached was, she said, I'm trying to lose weight, but I'm committed to having a good time eating faluda with my friend. Yeah. And with that awareness, then she was able to say to her friend in the evening, saying, you are my best friend. Will you help me lose weight rather than helping me enjoy faluda?
Yeah, right. I mean, that's what resources do we have to actually achieve our goals, right? So, yeah, we partner. Great.
Anju is saying, any last thoughts, Shripad? We have 2 more minutes. Anju, if you have a question, put it up. We will answer it. Let me see if there are any questions which we want to answer, which haven't been. I don't see any specifically.
Yeah. Maybe we could take up Vinita's. How would it be for an adventurous, unstructured mind?
Shweta, it is Robert Sapolsky. Shweta is asking which endocrinologist. Robert Sapolsky is a professor. So SAPOL, I think, Sapolsky. Just Google on YouTube is very popular. What was the other question you said, Kanika?
How would it be for an adventurous, unstructured mind?
So plan adventurous and unstructured things. Go bungee jumping, but get that done. I'm not saying it has to be stayed. My mission looks like this. Vinita's mission can look something completely different. It can be about disconnecting from behavior.
I think thank you so much, Shripad. This has been an enriching and eye-opening session for me personally, and I'm sure for all our audience here. In just 60 minutes, you've demonstrated how inner journey of self-discovery can help us take that first step towards a more meaningful life. Thank you ever so much for that clarity of thought, the ways to identify the sweet spot and inspire us towards this profound way of life. Thank you so very much. I thank the volunteers for their special contribution. We are done with all the questions, so I think we are good to conclude and thank everyone's participation in this discussion with such thoughtful questions, and all the provoking questions and comments were really valuable.
Thank you, everyone. It has been a pleasure. And you can always get in touch with me and ask me more questions. Happy to answer.